Welcome to the Irresistible You podcast. This is the place to get a dose of empowerment to create the life you crave and deserve. I'm your host, Amy Beltran, CEO and founder of Irresistible University. I teach women just like you how to ditch the body image issues, gain confidence, and lose the emotional weight to look and feel irresistible at any size. If you like this podcast, you're going to love my group coaching program. If you want to learn more about it, including the investment cost, what's included, see real client testimonials, and to sign up and enroll, please head over to irresistibleicing.com/course. The link is also in the show notes. Welcome back to the podcast. If you are new here, hi, welcome. If you're an OG listener, welcome back. Today's topic, this is what we're getting into, ladies. We are talking about how to get your ass on the damn scale. That's right. So one of my core beliefs, core values here with Irresistible You is that I do not believe in the whole scale-free living. So, and I'm going to get into that. I'm going to talk about why. I'm going to talk about why it's important to get your ass on the scale, why we need to do it, and why we don't do it. And so we're going to just get into it. You're probably going to get some like OG Amy here, like just going off in a few minutes because this just gets me like so pissed off and so fired up. So, um, and I can freely do this because I also fell into that trap years ago where I decided, oh my God, like I'm going to go scale free and I'm going to like live in bliss because I just want to stay in denial about the truth. And I'm just going to claim that it's because I want to be scale free and like the scale won't define me and all this bullshit. We're going to get into it. We are going to get into all of it. Okay. So first and foremost, I was thinking about this because I was watching a YouTube video. I'm not naming who it is, obviously. And it's someone who frequently does like weekly weight loss updates, weigh-ins, if you will. And the irony of it all is that she continues to do weekly weigh-ins and says how she's just not going to weigh in this week because she just can't handle it. And I'm like, bitch, like that is so just it just defeats the purpose, okay? It's not a weekly weigh-in. If you're going to decide to just not get on the scale because for whatever reason you have created this bullshit story about what you did this week and what it must mean and how that must define who you are as a person. And we have got to stop doing this. We have got to start building a better relationship with ourselves so that we can also have a healthy relationship with the scale and that we can also understand that the scale is literally just an inanimate object with a number. That's it. It does not define your level of morality. It does not define your sexiness. It does not define if you had a good or a bad week. Like, it just doesn't. And we put so much meaning into the fucking scale, and it has to stop. Because you cannot let an inanimate object dictate and control how you live your life. And that is exactly what you're doing. If the scale goes up, it's like, oh yeah, see, I told you I was horrible this week. I'm such a fat ass. I can't do this. I'll never lose the weight. This isn't working. Wah, wah, wah. If the scale goes down, it's like, oh my God, it's working. I can't believe it. I did everything right this week. And it's like, enough. Now, I firmly stand in the fact that I do not believe in going scale free. And there's a number of reasons for that. I believe that going scale free and just saying like, well, I'm never going to weigh myself again. I'm going to get on the scale backwards at the doctor's office because if I go to the doctor's office, it's not going to match the scale at home. And then I'm going to put myself in a tailspin and I'm going to spiral out of control and I'm going to binge eat all the things and I just can't handle it. Telling yourself you're going to just go scale free when you want to lose weight, when you want to maintain your weight, because you feel miserable at your weight. I'm talking to you. This podcast, number one, is not for the girl who like wants to lose 5 pounds. Okay. That's not what we're about here. This is for the woman who has been overweight for a long time. This is for the woman who cannot get the weight off and who has decided that the weight is equal to her feeling miserable in her own skin. That's what this is about. So when you say, you know what, fuck it, I'm going scale free, I can't do this anymore, I can no longer allow the scale to dictate how I feel. First and foremost, the scale cannot dictate how you feel. You get to dictate how you feel. So when you decide to go scale free, I'm going to be straight up with you guys, it's a cop out. It is a cop out that is keeping you in denial about the problem. It is keeping you in denial about your weight. It is keeping you in denial about how the weight makes you feel. Because if you just say, oh, I'm going scale free, I'm not doing this anymore, you are deciding, I'm just not going to do this because it's too hard. Because I can't face the number, because I don't know how to have a conversation with myself regardless of what the number is. I don't know how to love myself regardless of what the number is. I don't know how to validate myself other than a scale and a number. That's the true problem. The problem is not the scale. The scale sits on your bathroom floor, it collects lint, it collects dust, and it gives you a number when you step on top of it. And if you were to weigh yourself every single day, I promise you, you're going to get a different weight. Because that is how much our bodies fluctuate. And if you got on my scale, your doctor's scale, and whatever scale, they're probably all going to be different. So we have to stop creating this story around what it means, and that it means we're good or we're bad, or we're like, and it's like validating our existence on the earth. Okay. And it's not so much about the actual number and your actual weight. It is the story that you have created about what the weight means. It's like when you joined the free podcast group on Facebook, one of the questions is something like, what's your number one challenge when it comes to body image? And I see people type like stomach. And I'm like, your stomach is not your body image problem. It's the story that you create around what it means to have a big stomach, what it means to have a fat roll. You're saying my stomach, that's not body image issues. Body image issues come from the story that you are creating about what the weight means to you. Period. And if your weight truly didn't bother you, number one, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. We know that. But if your weight didn't bother you, you wouldn't give a shit about stepping on the scale or not. If you have a solid, rock solid foundation, a rock solid like relationship with yourself, you wouldn't give a shit about stepping on the scale because you wouldn't be bothered. So there was a time in my life where I decided, oh yeah, I'm going to go scale free. And I did the whole thing because I was at a point where I had gained back so much weight. This was like a couple of years after my wedding. And I had gained back so much weight. I was so miserable. And I was so, like, it was the point where I had not done any of the irresistible you work. I had not learned how to think about things differently. And I just decided that the scale was like dictating my life and it has control over, like, look at the drama and the story you're creating. Like, just talking about it, I want to actually kind of laugh because it's like the dramatics that you put on your life are like, you should have an Academy Award at this point. Seriously. Like, I can't. So I decided I'm going to go scale free. I'm going to just do measurements and da da da. I did it for like, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks or something like that. Well, let me tell you, girl, I gained so much weight. I gained so much weight. You know why? The saying is true. Out of sight, out of mind. And when you decide to live in denial, it is the most dangerous place to live in. And so much of the fat girl, the inner fat bitch, the entitled fat girl mentality, so much of those things that we talk about here are so deeply rooted in you living in denial. It's like, every time I did something like this, or it wasn't, let's say it wasn't even like I'm going to just do measurements or whatever. Let's say the times in my life where um, I was, weighing in every week because I was doing Weight Watchers, for example, and then I would like avoid the scale, right? Every time I would go weeks and weeks and weeks and avoid the scale, guess what would happen? I would gain weight. And I would gain weight not because of the scale. I would gain weight because something in that of saying, I'm just not going to get on there this week because I can't face the music. I'm afraid to feel what I'm going to feel when I see the number. Because ultimately that's what it's coming down to, is you're afraid of how you're going to feel. Because you're using that to dictate whether you were good or bad. Whether you're going to have a good week or a bad week. Whether you're going to have to like buckle down and hustle hard through the weight and get it off. And like completely restrict yourself for the next 7 days. That's what you're making it mean. So when you do that and you tell yourself, I'm going to avoid the scale, I just can't face it, I just got back from vacation, oh yeah, girl, you know how my feet and my hands get swollen and I can't do it. Da, da, da. Listen, when you do that, you don't realize that you're doing this. You are giving yourself permission to check out. You are giving yourself permission to check out and zombie eat your way through the next week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Or maybe it goes a month, 4 months. Next thing you know, you're like, oh my God, how did I gain back 60 pounds? You gained back the weight because you decided that you were going to check out and zombie eat your ass off. That's how it happens. So every time you stand in front of the closet, and I always use the classic example of like the change of seasons, and you go to put your jeans on or you go to put your short shorts on, and you're like, holy shit, my shorts aren't even coming up over my knees. How did I get here again? You got here again because you decided, I don't want to feel any type of way when I see a number. I don't want to have to face the music. I don't want to have to be accountable to myself. And I sure as hell do not want to have a conversation with myself about what the scale says. So when you avoid the scale, you're giving yourself permission to check out and zombie eat. This is so wrapped up in entitled fat girl like mindset, where it's like, I'm going to do what I want, when I want, can't nobody tell me nothing, and I'm going to get that food if I want to get it, and nobody's going to tell me no. That is entitled fat girl stuff. Okay? Every time in my life, when I use the scale every week, except for pregnancy, we get an exception for that, okay? Every time I use the scale and I get on there every week, it's interesting how I either maintain the number for the most part. Obviously, there's going to be weeks where there's a gain, but I would say, the majority of the time, there's a maintain or there's a loss. Because getting on the scale and facing the music, so to speak, that keeps me grounded, that keeps me accountable, and it keeps me awake. When you're just saying, I can't do this, I know it was a bad week, I'm going to just and the thing is, what is so ironic about all of it, let's say you've been on vacation, you've been eating all the food, drinking all the drinks, living it up, you're like super swollen, super bloated, you had yourself a good time. Nothing wrong with that. But then you decide, oh gosh, I just cannot get on the scale because, oh my God, it's going to be up. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to just hate myself when I see that, and it's going to take away my happiness from this trip. When you do that, the irony of it is that there's no way you go right back, you're not, because you're like, okay, I'm going to just get my shit together, and tomorrow I'm going to go ham on, and you're like, I'm going to restrict this, I'm not going to allow myself to eat this, I got to clear the cabinet. You do the whole Monday start over bullshit on a Wednesday or whatever day of the week it is when you get on the scale, okay? But you do that typical, I'm going to start over on Monday bullshit. When you do that, the irony of it is it doesn't last. You do it for a day or two. You do it for a day or two, and then you're like, oh my God, this is too hard to restrict myself. And you're like, and because you're so checked out, it's like, well, I can just zombie eat because I don't have to be accountable to myself on the scale. And then you're going to be angry at yourself when you get on the scale a month from now when you have the guts to do it and realize it's gone up or realize your jeans aren't buttoning. Like the cycle that this creates inside of you is maddening. It is insanity. It is chaotic. And I feel anxious and chaotic just talking about it right now because it is crazy making behavior, but it's what you do, right? Because you justify the shit out of everything you do because you feel entitled to you're going to have things your way, the way you want to do it. And it's like when I'm watching that girl, I'm thinking, oh my God, this is such entitlement because it's like I have a series about weekly weigh-in, but then because I had a bad week or I was busy, I was moving, I was stressed out, I had a fever, I had a dentist appointment, I had to go to soccer practice. Like, what other excuse can you possibly use? It gets old. It gets old. And you cannot, if you want to lose weight, right? If this is what you want, if you want to get the weight off of you, you have to be accountable to yourself. It is not about using the scale as the like source of truth of all things, because that is not what it's for, and I'm going to get into that as well. But it is about checking in on different levels, different ways of checking in with your body. It's not just the scale, but the scale is a big piece of it. But it doesn't tell the whole story. It tells part of the story. And it's not even just that it's the scale, it's the fact that you just decide, I can't face the music. Because if I face the music and see a gain, I can't possibly live with myself right now. I can't go there right now. I can't emotionally go there right now. And this always goes back to, okay, yeah, you want to lose your physical weight, then deal with your emotional weight. Because it is your emotional weight that is weighing you down. The reason why you cannot have this conversation with yourself. The reason why you cannot face the music is because you're terrified of the story that it's going to create in your head. When the whole time, this entire time, you had the ability to create and control the story. That's an option. But when we're in victim, pity party, entitled fat girl mode, it's like, no, everything's happening to me. And I have no control over my life. Bullshit. So, living in denial is a dangerous place to live in. You have to get your ass out of denial. If you don't like your life, if you don't like your weight, if you don't like the direction you're heading in at any point in your life, get your ass out of denial. Because that is such a dangerous place to be in. Because when you're living in denial, you will consistently justify all of your stuff. You will consistently justify every negative thought that you have in your head. You will find evidence about why that must be true. You know, skipping the scale because you determined that you must have had a bad week, that's a bullshit ass excuse. It's an excuse to not face the music. It's an excuse to not... You should see getting on the scale, if you want to change, if you're tired of yo-yo dieting, if you are tired of the up and down game, if you are tired of the start over on Monday crap, then you have to face the scale and see the scale as a learning opportunity for transformation. Not to get the number down. Okay, that's like icing on the cake, okay? A learning opportunity to change what the weight means to you. Avoiding it, being in denial, does not ever give you the chance to learn shit. The only thing you're learning how to do is how to stay under your wet blanket of misery. That's what you're learning how to do. When you're ready to rip that wet blanket off and face the music and start learning how to be accountable to yourself, to start doing what you say you're going to do, you're going to build your confidence. You're going to lose the body image bullshit. You're going to drop the emotional weight. And probably somewhere in all of that change, the physical weight will start to fall off too. when you start respecting yourself, when you start showing up for yourself, when you start doing the things you told yourself you were going to do. Getting on the scale is not about being obsessive about the number. It's not about that. It's not about getting obsessed about what the number is. And if that's the case, you have to change your relationship with yourself and then with the scale. Getting on the scale, like this is how you start changing the story. You just tell it differently. And for so many of you that act like you're a victim, you don't realize that those beliefs, those bullshit stories that you have, just as easy as you're creating those, you could be creating the opposite. So for example, you can create the belief, the thought that, you know what? Getting on the scale is an opportunity to change the story that I just created about myself. How many of you, before you get on the scale, it's like you're priming yourself to be okay? It's kind of like, what is it? Brene Brown, she talks about how we dress rehearse. What is she? We dress rehearse for tragedy. Right? Like she tells a story where you look in on your kids and you're looking at them and you just think about all the horrible things that could ever happen to them. That way, if it ever happens, you're like, well, I dress rehearse that, I'm good. No, you're not. It's just like before you get on the scale, it's like you tell yourself, well, I did have that cake this week and I was really bad and I had a really bad week and I overate and I did binge a couple of times and there's just no way the scale is going to be down this week. And it's like you're prepping and dress rehearsing for the number that you're going to see. And instead, it's like, how about getting on the scale is an opportunity to change that story that you just created? And to tell the truth. Start telling yourself the truth. Because if you're in denial about stepping on the scale, I know damn well you're also in denial about what's really going on in your life. You're in denial about how things really are. And it's so funny how then we say, well, yeah, I did have this. Like, here's what I want to say. When you get on the scale, it is that opportunity to change your thoughts. And it's also for you to realize that the scale is just the scale. It doesn't control you. It doesn't dictate. It does not validate your existence. And it does not validate the work that you did this week on your weight. It does not do that. It's a data point. It is one, like, listen to me. It is one piece of data. It's a piece of the puzzle. It's not the entire puzzle. And so as you're, working on yourself and trying to transform your life, we can't just use the scale as our only source of truth. It's one piece of it. And so use it that way. It's like, okay, if I get on the scale and it's up 3 pounds, that's an opportunity for me, instead of going, oh my God, you fat bitch, I can't believe it. See, I told you you were a piece of shit. I told you this wasn't going to work. I told you it's never going to happen for you. You're always going to be fat and miserable. Stop. 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 Instead, we're changing the story to like, okay, it says I'm up 3 pounds. Is there any truth to this? Do I believe that it could be up 3 pounds this week? Let's use this and say, let me go back and look at my week. And it's like, all right, well, this week, I had just gotten off my period and I had just got back from a trip, or, you start telling the truth. The truth is not you're a fat piece of shit. The truth is, well, the scale says I'm up 3 pounds. And the truth is, well, I had my period. I just got back from vacation. I went out to dinner 2 or 3 times. Like, tell yourself the truth. That's called accountability. That is called not beating yourself up. That is called not creating bullshit stories. That is called telling the truth. And then if it's up 3 pounds, okay, we don't beat ourselves up because of it. What we do is we also look at the other data points in our life and say, you know what? I'm really proud of myself for getting out and walking, 4 times this week. I'm really proud of myself for substituting um, Diet Pepsi for Pepsi, whatever, right? I need you to look at the other things that you're doing. It's not just the number on the scale. So even when you go up on the scale, there's things that you need to be celebrating. Or it's like, you know what? I'm really glad that I started applying some of this thought work and I changed some of my bullshit thoughts this week. Or I'm really proud of myself for, putting myself out there on that job interview. I did such a good job with that. Stop only focusing on a number and a scale as your validation of your entire life. You validate everything good that you've done on this earth based on what the scale says. You could be solving world hunger, world peace, helping homeless people, doing all the things, volunteering, and you would still tell yourself you're a worthless piece of shit because the scale went up this week. I mean, really. It's enough is enough. If you want to change your life, you change the relationship you have with yourself. Period. Or it's not going to change. Or you're going to continue yo-yo dieting, doing these bullshit fad diets till the day you die. That's not that's not exaggerating. That's not being dramatic. It is what it is. So you get to decide when I get on that scale, this is an opportunity to talk better to myself. This is an opportunity to change the way I think about myself and about my weight. And you can't do that if you decide you're going to go scale free and live in denial the rest of your life. If your weight bothers you this much, you cannot live in denial, because living in denial is the same thing as you going and emotionally eating to zone out in your life. It's the same thing as zombie eating. Living in denial just pushes it down further. Living in denial is well, I'm just going to act like that's not a problem when I know this really is a problem that I don't like. So I think also too, when you start thinking about food and your behaviors and all the things in your life, please stop classifying things as good and bad. Because sometimes we overeat. We're human, okay? Sometimes we have a binge. It's okay. It's not good or bad. It just is. It's like when I'm talking to Kat about her blood sugar. We don't use the word good or bad sugar. If it's we tell her it's either high or low or it's in range. Period. It doesn't mean good or bad. And you have to think the same way about yourself, your weight, and how you show up, the actions that you take. Think about your weight too. It's it's not good or bad. It's just high or low. And then you have a number in range that you want to be. That's it. The circumstance, like I said last week, doesn't change. You're still overweight. But the way you think about it, the story that you tell, the story that you create, it changes when you decide to think differently. When you decide, I am not willing to zone out and zombie eat and check out and just live in denial the rest of my life. How is that serving you? Again, the scale is one piece of data. It's kind of like if I'm looking at my finances, I'm not going to just look at one thing to dictate why everything is the way it is. We're going to look at other things. So the scale, it's sometimes, you know what? It might be up when you don't believe it should be up, and that's okay. There's also weeks your ass gets on there and it's down and you're thinking, how the hell is it down? But I'll take it. You don't question that, girl. Look, let me tell you, you do not question when it goes down. You're just wipe your forehead ooh, Lord, thank you. I don't know how that happened because I ate my ass off all week. Right? We got to change this. We have to change this because the scale is not the thing that's dictating your life. The scale is not the thing controlling your life. You get to do that. Your thoughts get to do that. And that's what we have to get to. That's where we have to go. So as a takeaway, I want you to think about all the times in your life. How many times in your life have you have you allowed yourself to lose time, to waste time, because the scale told you something you didn't like? I'll give you an example. So I know I've shared this example before, but we have a lot of new listeners too. There was this one day, I mean, I just remember this day so clearly, like crystal clear, where I was looking in the mirror and I was like, yes, girl. I was like, you look good. I like this outfit. The hair is good. The makeup's on point. Like, yes, let's go. And at the time, my scale was downstairs in the kitchen. And I don't know what the hell got a hold of me. I just decided, you know what it was? I do know what happened. I was feeling so good about myself that in my head, I thought, I need to validate this on the scale. Because if I feel this good, I know that scale has gone down this week. That is the thought. That is exactly what I was thinking. And so when I got on that scale, that baby was up. Okay. I don't remember the number, but it was up. And I just remember in that moment, the way I felt was like taking a balloon and sticking it with a pen. My whole mood just went from like, it just completely deflated me. And I just remember the rest of the day just not having a good day. I was just nasty and negative and felt bad about myself, and I allowed that scale and the way I was thinking about it to control everything. And so that time that we waste, we don't get that time back. And that's what matters here. What matters is we have one life to live. And whatever time you have and you're wasting it obsessing about your weight, you're wasting it obsessing about a number, you're wasting it obsessing that there's fat rolls, well, I'm here to tell you that time doesn't get to come back. You don't get to the end of your weight loss journey and there's like a bucket of time under the rainbow. It doesn't work that way. You are who you are when you get there. You are the age that you are when you get there. You don't get a bucket of time sitting there waiting for you with the leprechaun. It doesn't happen that way. So how much more time are you willing to waste? Seriously, how much more time? Because that's what you're doing. So you might as well come up with a number and say, well, I'm willing to waste X number of time for the rest of my life because I don't want to change, or I don't want to create a different story, or I'm going to just decide to live in denial. And then if that's the case, that's your choice. That's your choice. And so you get to make that decision. Straight up. That's the beauty of life. You get to make that decision. And it's like once something is brought to your attention, it is now a choice and it is now an option to keep doing what you're doing. So you get to decide that. So let's talk about this in the Facebook group. I want you guys to share with me. I want to hear your scale stories. When was a time that you allowed the scale to control your day? What did that feel like? Like, let's share those stories because we get to change those stories going forward. We get to change them. And it really boils down to the more you get to know yourself, the better relationship that you build with yourself. Nothing's going to get in the way of that, including the scale. And I'm not saying this is going to be easy breezy the first time you do it. It takes practice, which is why you have to keep doing it. You have to keep doing it. And again, it's not because of the number. It's because if you want to change the meaning that you've attached to your weight, that you've attached to the way that you eat, the way that you take care of yourself, you have to do this. You have to do this. So let's go in the Facebook group. Let's keep this conversation going. Share your stories with me. Ask your questions. Let me know how you're doing. I would love to chat more about this with you guys. And again, I want to ask a favor. If you are loving the podcast, if this podcast is helping you in your life in any tiny little way, tiny way, big way, whatever it is, can you please leave a rating and review on iTunes? That helps the podcast grow. That is how you can, the number one way you can support the podcast is to leave a rating and review so that other people can find it and know that we have this community of irresistible women here waiting. So If you guys love this, again, I want to remind you that you can enroll into the Irresistible You coaching program. It is an online program coupled with myself. I provide live coaching in the program. You can get more information at irresistibleicing.com/course. And if you have any questions that are not answered on that page, please reach out to me and I would be happy to answer those to you. You can message me in the group or shoot me a DM over on Instagram. I am at Irresistible Icing. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you have an amazing week. Until next time, stay irresistible. Bye, guys.